I think over time, when we're sitting here 10 years from now, a person will walk into their doctor, they'll do a diagnosis, whether that's an examination of their brain or just the doctor talking to them, and he or she will say, you in particular should probably use compound number 1, but someone else should be number 3, and someone else will be getting a cocktail of number 1 and number 3, and a little bit of number 7.
This podcast discusses psychedelic-assisted therapy, which involves the use of substances that are illegal in many countries. We prioritize safety and do not encourage illegal drug use. Psychedelic therapy should only be conducted in controlled legal settings under professional supervision. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before considering any form of treatment. Kevin Ryan, welcome to the New Health Club show today. We're not going to talk about you as the godfather of tech today, so if somebody wants to hear that, it's going to happen somewhere else. Today, I would like to talk to you about your, let's say, relationship to psychedelics. And what I thought when I saw you talking on a couple of podcasts now about this, I thought it's really interesting how open and kind of assuring you are around this topic. So when did you think about the first time to really, let's say, come out with the topic?
Yeah, well, first of all, I read the Michael Pollan book in 2017, 2018, which was really my first introduction. And then after reading that book, I realized, I had the wrong impressions about psychedelics. I had never tried anything, didn't know about it, hadn't thought about it. And I really, ironically, the book is called How to Change Your Mind, and it completely changed my mind on this topic. So then I was, at the time I was on the board of Yale, and it turns out that I didn't even know, but Yale has a very good practice in psychedelics, a very academic. They've done a lot of the original research. In fact, most of the original research on ketamine was done at Yale under John Crystal. And so I realized I had access to all those people, and so I got to get involved there. And so I started supporting, as a nonprofit donor, the Yale Center for Psychedelic Research, where I still today, I'm one of the leading, if not the biggest donor to that group. And then as part of that, got involved with a group called the PSFC, which is a psychedelic funders circle, and have been involved with that for 6 or 7 years. So just slowly got involved with that. And so I really became persuaded at that point that this was a really important thing for mental health. At the time, it was a little more taboo. That's been changing over the last 7 years. But I felt like I was in a good position to talk about this and to promote it. And it actually is consistent with what I do for a living because, when you're a early stage investor or a company creator, you have to think of fundamental trends that are not obvious to everyone, but will be big 5 or 10 years from now. And then you start that company, you invest that in that company, you get involved with that nonprofit, whatever it is. That's my approach to life. And so this is one of the fundamental trends I thought was going to be happening, is happening, and will be a very significant part of mental health, in the next decade.
But you also have a company that researches around this. Maybe you can also talk about this.
So then later on, first I was only a nonprofit donor, and then started thinking about the next transition in psychedelics. And so what I realized is that nonprofit donations were not going to get us to where we needed to be because whether we like it or not, in most systems in the U.S. system, to get something approved by the FDA takes, probably $300 million, to use a round number, of financing to take one compound through the process for one condition. And so to do that, takes a lot of money. And there wasn't going to be enough nonprofit money available for that, and the government wasn't going to do it. So the only other alternative is the private sector. And so then I started thinking that, this was going to happen. It was already Compass and Atai had already been created. There were some companies. And so I just wanted to see, are there more, situations, compounds that most people don't know about that could be really useful? And most people hadn't gone through that exercise yet. It also would have the advantage of getting a patent. That's been one of the biggest challenges these are essentially biotech companies. And so one of the reasons that some people have been hesitant to put money into any well-meaning company that's doing this is they don't have a patent. Patent means you have 20 years exclusive use for that compound. And if it gets approved, other people, if you don't have a patent, anyone can open a clinic across the street and possibly use the same compound. And so it's hard to get your money back, which means it's hard to raise the money.
Yeah.
And so I'd be perfectly happy if, the government stepped forth and just said, we're going to spend all the money and approve this, but that's not how our system works. Unfortunately, it has to come from the private sector. And so I started a company after looking at all of the compounds out there, working closely with researchers that I knew from Yale. And then we found a compound called methylone that we thought had very interesting characteristics. And so then started the company 4 years ago. And as of today, we've finished phase 2 trials, and we'll be starting phase 3 trials next year.
But there's still a lot of really big investors who are still very kind of critical, or like it's too much of a roller coaster industry. There's too much of a regulatory problem. So, but you seem super convinced.
Yeah.
So what makes you so convinced?
Look, everything has risk. But the first thing is that the academic results are unbelievably compelling. So, by now there have been 300 academic studies, most of them double-blind, most of them at top institutions, Johns Hopkins, Yale, NYU, places like this. This is serious work. And, this is not being done by hippies who are trying to just, get something approved. They are interested in how the brain works and can we help? And at the same time, we have a big challenge, certainly in this country, but all over the world, which is that no one disputes the fact that mental health issues have been growing and are very significant. And if I asked you what has been approved by the FDA in the last 10 years to help with this, nothing. And when I've spoken to people from the government in the mental health division, they're fully aware of that. They unfortunately can't create compounds. They need people to come forth. But they have said, look, this is the most promising thing we've seen. We want to approve this, but we're going to need private sector to do the work, do it rigorously, come to us and get it done. So I do think it'll be done. Doesn't mean there aren't challenges along the way. Doesn't mean it's not expensive. Doesn't mean it's still political. People wonder whether some pharma companies are quietly in the background trying to oppose this because it is more lucrative for them to have you take a pill every day, basically be addicted to it, and take a pill for the next 40 years. That's a very lucrative business. So this would cannibalize their existing business by having a better, cheaper product. But other than that, most people though still want this to happen. This administration, actually is more pro psychedelics than the last administration. So there are many good things happening. That's just started. So yeah, I'm very bullish. Is it 100% certain? No, but the underground numbers. We have to remember that when most drugs get approved, let's say it's a breast cancer drug or something, it's been tested on maybe 500 people. Right?
It's not a lot, actually.
It's not a lot in the scheme of life. If I said to you, has this been tested on overweight, Hispanic women who have diabetes? The answer is no. They don't even get into the trial. So there are many things that haven't been done. And I use that as a random example. So we don't know. They're not as safe as this is in some ways, because there's probably 30 million people in this country who have tried psilocybin at some point. And that means it's everyone. It's pregnant women, it's all kinds of things. It wasn't necessarily legal, but they've tried it. So I think the safety part, in my mind, has already been tested. So now we just need to make sure that it works well, that it works well for the right conditions, that we know what it does not work for.
And I mean, you were mentioning the new government. So I mean, do you feel that the bipartisan approach to this, is it more effective in a way?
Well, it's one of the few issues that, as of right now, is still bipartisan. Rick Perry has been playing a very important role.
We had him on a podcast.
Oh, you did, yeah. So, and as a Republican in Texas, he starts from the premise that he knows and has always supported veterans. So many veterans have had a problem. So many veterans have been healed by using this. And so he's just sitting there going, look, this works. We need to help our people who, gave service to the country and have paid a price for it. So that helps a lot. PTSD, the two largest categories of PTSD survivors are sexual assault victims and veterans. And those two categories, unfortunately hit every single corner of this country and are pretty bipartisan. And so we want to keep it that way. There's no reason in the world this should be a partisan issue.
Yeah. And I mean, like a lot of people from in Europe, for example, immediately feel like, oh, does it mean it's now like a Trump topic and everything? But maybe you could quickly explain to a bigger audience how this bipartisan thing and why is it actually a good strategy to stabilize also things kind of?
Well, stepping back for a second, there's two ways of getting psychedelics approved for use. One is at the state level and one is at the national level. At the national level, it has to go through the FDA. It's not Congress that really decides that. It's the FDA. So it could be partisan if one administration doesn't want to do anything. But the truth is both of the last two administrations were very open to this idea, and there were people supporting it. And you're also just seeing more and more, every single year, more and more people get comfortable with this topic. More and more people have read front page articles in the New York Times saying that these things work. More and more people have a cousin, a friend somewhere who has tried it and had great results. And now they realize actually it's not addictive, that you can't overdose with psilocybin or with LSD really. So the risks are actually much less than most people think. So that's helpful. At the state level, in a way, it could be partisan or not partisan. You can have a very Republican state approve this or a very liberal state approve this. And I certainly hope that both states, both types of states, all states do this. The only two states to date who have approved things by the ballot initiative is in Oregon and in Colorado. And now New Mexico has approved it at the state legislature level, but not implemented it yet. And there are other states that have spent money on research that are moving this forward, which is a precursor to trying to approve it at the state legislature. Perfectly reasonable thing. They're allocating, $50 million to study the topic to see whether it makes sense. And I believe Kentucky has done things. Indiana has done things. And there's other states as well.
Yeah.
New York State, by the way, which I will be involved with. There is a bill that's we're going to attempt to get passed, and this is independent of me. I'm going to try and help. But the state Senate, Amy Pollan, who is a big believer, has a bill, and then I think that's going to be put forward over the next 6 months to see if it can be approved for psilocybin.
And how do you think this will change healthcare in America if it's really, let's say, available and not super expensive?
Well, we have to talk about the cost, because I think in the beginning it will be relatively expensive, but we also have to compare expensive compared to what? The actual cost of you taking antidepressants for 30 years is actually very expensive.
Yeah.
The cost of you not doing something is extraordinarily expensive, which is true of a lot of people. So if you have mental health issues, you miss work, all kinds of bad things happen. So if you do a one-on-one session and someone sits with you for 6-7 hours, there's no way for that not to cost several $1,000s.
Yeah.
What we've seen so far in Oregon is they're doing group ceremonies or group sessions, which can work very effectively. And so the cost is $600-$700, which, in the scheme of life is more expensive than we like, but not that expensive. A friend of mine was about to have back surgery, and it was priced at $200,000 for the day. That's very expensive. This is much, much, much less.
So then at one point, there's more like a scaling opportunity also for these offerings?
I think as we get more experience in each state in the country, people will figure out ways for this to be less expensive. We haven't, in the beginning, they want to be conservative. You don't want to have a session with 50 people, which would obviously be less expensive, but probably less effective. There are many indigenous traditions where, for example, ayahuasca can often be done with 100 people in the room. There'll be several guides there, but that's been going on for literally thousands of years, and many people have had very, very effective results using that. So I think there will be ways of doing that. When people do ayahuasca, for example, it often costs maybe a couple $100.
Right, yeah, that's very cost efficient if you want, right?
Yeah.
But you're also somebody who talks kind of openly about your personal interest, or that you, one can say you use it recreationally in a sense that you have an additional consciousness around this. So
what's different about me, I don't really have any mental health issues, which many people do, and I've been very lucky. So I haven't needed it for that. But I do find that, I think over time, recreationally, it will be when we're sitting here 20 years from now, I think there'll be more opportunities to do that. And I think it can be better for you than alcohol. I think I always remind people that people feel very comfortable having a couple of drinks. The alcohol can be addictive. There's probably 8 to 10% of people who at some point have a drinking problem who have used it. You could overdose. No one thinks about that, but imagine I said, I'm going to give you 1 dose of something. If you take 25, you'll die. Normally you'd say to me, I'm not sure I want to even take 1 dose if you're telling me that. That's what alcohol is. That neither one of those points are true of LSD or of mushrooms. So I think I don't use it a lot, but occasionally if I'm in some situation, if I'm at Burning Man or something like this, absolutely.
And what role plays something like Burning Man, or you talk about Glastonbury also, what role does that play in your life as a fast-paced entrepreneur guy who's traveling?
Yeah, I think Burning Man is a unique institution, and I've been going for years, and I just find it this incredible collection of art, of music. There's probably 30 of the top 50 DJs in the world are playing every night, for free, available to everyone. There's just remarkable creativity. I mean, it's an adult playground where people are putting together amazing art cars and art objects and craziness. And so I think it self-selects. And so I come away from that experience every time feeling better about humanity, feeling more creative, thinking about, why doesn't the rest of the world look like this? So yeah, I'm a big fan of the institution, and have been quite involved. I have my own camp. I brought 27 people there this year. I was an art support camp. So I commissioned a very large art object that looks like Stonehenge. If Stonehenge were lit from inside, so it had lava inside it, and then it was probably 50 feet across with a portal. And so it was, we held it was a party for 500 people in the middle of the desert at this art object. So it was it's the second time I've brought an art object to Burning Man, and I think it's a great way to contribute to Burning Man. And the fact that everyone does these things for free,
that's the exchange.
It's free to everyone else.
And
it's not a barter economy, and it's not an exchange economy. It's a gifting economy. It's an incredibly beautiful thing, the fact that each camp provides something for free. You might have a yoga camp where you just provide yoga classes all day. I might provide a huge art object. Someone else provides free breakfast for 200 people. Someone else might have a hugging studio where...
What is that?
You'll be driving on your bike, and it'll be a hugging camp.
Okay.
And if you stop, you go in, and someone will give you a very, very nice hug.
A very nice hug, okay.
Yeah, a really good quality hug.
And how do you think psychedelics have an impact on this? It's like a little experimental camp, like a bigger camp kind of.
Yeah, no one, Burning Man is known for that, but no one needs to do psychedelics, and plenty of people don't do psychedelics.
Yeah.
It is a very good environment because it's incredibly safe. Cars can't go more than 7 miles an hour.
Okay,
you're on bicycles, so and it's sand. So even, I don't know, if you fell over, you can't even hurt yourself. So it's, and the creativity and the color and the light and the flames that come off things and the drone shows mean that, if you are taking psychedelics, it will accentuate some of the things you're seeing and make them even more powerful. So it is a beautiful place to do it, which is why, a lot of people there do. And it's very safe because everyone around you knows what they're doing. The vast majority of people know what they're doing. It's a very safe place.
And so I'm always curious, you're obviously a very successful entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, investor. So since you started doing this for yourself, personally, in what way do you think has your kind of own creativity or insight in, let's say, new business cases changed?
Look, it's very hard to measure creativity.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my son the other day, and I was saying, I just don't know if there's been this huge impact. And he said, wait, since, you started on this journey, my company, AliCorp, has grown many times. We've started many more companies than before, made many more investments, had a lot of success. Could be a complete coincidence that it happened during this time, but, who knows? So it's hard for me to, I don't point to one thing where I just had this brilliant, revelation. that was due to psychedelics or something, but I think it also has made me more flexible, more in touch, more compassionate. I think, especially if you take MDMA or something with your friend, with your brother, with your spouse, with your parent, with your child, it's a very heart-opening, substance. And so you generally come away appreciating how much you just love this other person.
And I mean, like a lot of investors, entrepreneurs would say, yeah, you need to be really tough with certain decisions and otherwise you never get anywhere. It's kind of still the image of a venture capitalist or like a founder. So, but if you start to do psychedelics, you kind of, I'm not going to say you lose this a little bit, but you find yourself suddenly in the perspective of the other person.
Yeah.
Do you think this is in general a good thing for
I do.
For an economy?
I do. I mean, I think there's definitely that. I mean, you need to obviously still be making difficult decisions to stop funding a company, doing things like that. So if you lose that, that's not good. On the other hand, what is, especially for an early stage investor like me, what is your primary role? It is to be helping a CEO be successful. And, and they are going through a lot of crazy things and they're going through ups and downs. It's not for everyone. It's not easy. There's a lot of pressure, can be a lot of pressure on them. And so the fact that if they can feel compassion and sympathy and empathy from their investors, from their VC, from their chairman, I think that's a really positive thing. And I think they want to work with someone who gives that. I don't think of myself as a drill sergeant for these things. I think of myself as a coach, that is trying to hopefully help them. And I have some experience and some years and some gray hairs that they don't have yet. And I'm trying to bring that to the table. And I think a lot of the successful venture capitalists fit that profile. By the way, when you're at Burning Man, of course, you do run into many, 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 many tech CEOs, many venture capitalists. It's overpopulated with the tech community and the creative community. It's underpopulated with government people, with bankers, with lawyers. It's just anyone can go, but it's disproportionately people who have like an alternative viewpoint and are open to an environment like this.
And what do you think, like the three groups you mentioned, why do you think they were not really open to this so much, kind of?
Well, look, still psychedelics in the United States in most places are technically illegal. The government has said they're not really enforcing that, and they're not enforcing it at all. But it is technically illegal. So if you work for the government and have a security clearance, it makes sense that you're not even going to take that tiny risk. But I think it's just a perspective on life. Lawyers are trying to be very careful and, don't take risks. If lawyers took risks, it would throw off the whole economy. So they're not going to be the first people who go. Not that there aren't who do go, but no, it's definitely disproportionately other people. And I think it's really interesting to see one of the things I love about Burning Man is that it is a cross section between a second grade teacher and a plumber and a CEO, but they all have one thing in common, that they find this environment fascinating, regenerative, empathetic, and beautiful.
And how has your relationship to risk changed since psychedelics?
I don't think it has changed. I mean, I've been starting companies for 25 years. So at least from a business point of view, I've always been on the, take the most amount of risk, part of the economy. And so I was there before. I had started many companies before this. So I don't think it changed things for me there.
And to what do you contribute that you have this, let's say, resilience and risk at the same time? It's a very rare combination, maybe.
I don't know. I think I was always just built that way. I mean, whether it was through sports or through other things, you know, the key is to not take these things too personally. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're trying a professional athlete, if they had a bad game last night, generally it didn't ruin your day today. You know, it's over. Yeah. You're just thinking, okay, yeah, that was not a good game for me. And what he's thinking about, or she, is like, okay, tomorrow night I have another game. I'm just focused on what I'm going to do better. but you move on. Mm-hmm. And if you like to play the game, whether it's basketball, even if your team didn't have a great record this year, if you love basketball, you had a great time because you love playing basketball. And so the things I do, I love doing. And so, yes, you are trying to make them more successful. Yes, hopefully at the end they make money. But I don't think about that very much. I actually like the process. I like, the challenge of sitting there with a new idea or with an entrepreneur who just has the beginnings of an idea or a company and saying, how can we build this to be very, very successful?
And of course, the number one question for many people is, should every psychedelic company now be an AI first company?
Well, no, not at all. There's actually not that much of a role for AI in psychedelics. And the reason I say that is that the number one issue right now is that psychedelics are not legal. And so we need to get it to the point where they are legal. So far, there's not a huge role. We know that if a person who has PTSD takes MDMA or takes methadone or takes something else, then there's a very good chance, with a guide with them, that they will do better. The numbers that were public for the MDMA trials, were extraordinary. I think 66% of people after 6 months did not were not diagnosed with MDMA anymore. And these are people who on average, I think, had it for 10 years. It is a non-trivial problem. It's an extraordinary result. I don't think we've ever accomplished that using anything else in the world. And so that's the most important thing. That is what's happening, and that is the substance.
So kind of the research with AI is also still, you don't really see right now that this is necessary to kind of engage in this in a way?
Look, AI maybe eventually will play a role in trying to figure out, is it going to be better for you or for someone else? Mm-hmm. Right now, it appears to work for a high percentage of people. Let's put it this way. I think most data shows that it works more effectively and a higher percentage of the time than all the antidepressants out there that are, billions and billions and billions of dollars of revenue. So already it's working well. Mm-hmm. If there are tools that can make it work better, great. As of right now, there is not an AI psychedelics company that is very valuable. I don't think that's the number one thing. Mm-hmm. They also can't. AI really works best when it's working on large amounts of data. Okay, we don't have large amounts of data.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So, you can't really, if you have a clinical trial of 500 people, we don't need AI for that.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, so I think I'm a big investor in AI, and I think it will have extremely impactful in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't think in psychedelics it will play an enormous role, certainly in the next 5 years.
Okay. And what is the compound you're most excited about? Like where you think it's the biggest transformative power?
Each one, I'm bullish on many of them. So, I think methadone is going to be very impactful, which is our company. So I feel very good about that for PTSD.
Is this related to MDMA, just a different
It's an MDMA molecule? Analog.
Okay,
so
analog.
But it's not the same compound. And it just has slightly different. You can take it more frequently. It's a little bit less, a little bit toxic on the system. Okay. There's less of a serotonin problem. It's milder, so it's in some ways not as strong, I think, as MDMA. So I think over time, when we're sitting here 10 years from now, a person will walk into their doctor, they'll do a diagnosis, whether that's an examination of their brain or just the doctor talking to them, and he or she will say, you in particular should probably use compound number 1, but someone else should be number 3, and someone else will be getting a cocktail of number 1 and number 3 and a little bit of number 7. Once we understand the brain a little bit better, many people know that there are many guides out there who will sit down with you and give you MDMA and mushrooms. That can be a very good combination.
It's a hippie flip, right?
Yeah, it can be or a candy flip.
Candy flip, sorry.
I mean, that's normally with LSD. But anyway, you can combine things that have. So we're just in the beginning stages of this. Eventually, even AI may play a role. That there'll be the right cocktail for you. Mm-hmm. Still one of the most interesting things in the whole space is how little we understand about the brain.
Yeah.
Think of it this way: if I said to you, "What causes depression?" We've known about depression for hundreds of years.
But we don't know exactly where it comes from, right?
You can't even tell me whether it's really genetic, which we haven't really found a connection to, Or is it environmental? But then you're thinking, that's so funny. My sister, who's a year younger than me, grew up in the same household. She has severe depression. I don't. Why is that?
Why is that?
Same environment. We just don't know very well. So, and that was true of aspirin. I believe that aspirin was legal and we used it for 50 years before we understood exactly why it worked.
50 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
We knew, I think, that it worked. We knew that it was safe. We just couldn't explain it. And so in psychedelics, we can explain a little bit. We talk about neuroplasticity in the brain. We can see, put a scan up of your brain before LSD and after LSD. I can see the difference. There are many, many more connections in your brain. But if you want to step further and say exactly what's happening, we don't really know. We don't know why right now some people appear to be cured with PTSD if they're using MDMA or methadone, and some are not. And we're not really sure why.
So it's still kind of a huge amount of research that's necessary.
Yeah, and that's true of just everything in the brain.
But I mean, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people fear that it's kind of a repetition at one point, like in the 60s, and something goes wrong or like some scandal is happening. So what is your, let's say, strategy to really make it happen now in a way that it's available for everybody? Yeah,
I think, it was so early on. And look, there's always a risk. I mean, if we were sitting here 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and you said to me, I'm sure vaccines will start to be less popular and a slightly partisan issue, I would have said, are you insane? That is the most definitively proven, every single doctor in this country is a favorite. And so how did that happen? That's COVID, a subject for another podcast. But I'm shocked that has happened. And that, a bunch of people grabbed a narrative and I think distorted it and caused problems. And many people have died because of that, by not getting vaccinated. So is that always a risk? Yes. On the other hand, what's changed since the 60s is that, tens of millions of people have taken psychedelics. We didn't have hundreds of academic studies at the top echelons of universities that showed that it was safe and that it was effective. So I think we're in a very different position today. And so I don't think that will happen. And the final thing that's happened is that, yes, there were mental health issues in 1970. Not at all today. It is not the level of priority for this entire country. If I go into any high school and I talk to 10 mothers, what is their number one concern? It's mental health issues for their kids. It's not It's not really getting diseases. It's not all the things that people were worried about 100 years ago. They're worried about mental health issues. And that is very, as we said earlier, very nonpartisan, happening more and more to girls. We think some of it's linked to phones, but we're not sure. It's a big issue. So all those reasons combined mean that I don't think we're going back here.
And I mean, let's quickly come back to your, let's say, personal engagement with this. So do you feel like your kind of social surroundings have transformed also since you engage in this? Do you have other, let's say, have your friend circle changed? Has your...
A little bit. First of all, it's not like I do psychedelics all the time, so it doesn't
No,
have
but
to
I mean
change.
in a kind of a certain
if you start playing...
moment.
Decide you love squash and you start playing squash 3 times a week.
It could be the same thing.
It doesn't really change your friend group. You just have a new group of 10 people you play squash with that you add on. So, no, I think there are people I'm friends with now because we go to Burning Man or music festivals, things like that. So it is a part of my life, but it doesn't close off any other part of my life. I mean, I would say probably the majority of those friends from my Yale undergraduate class have never tried psychedelics, and so that doesn't matter to me at all. It's no different than if you told me they haven't played squash. Fine, I won't play squash with them, but
it's a nice,
we'll still be great friends.
Nice comparison. Like it could be like a squash hobby, but I mean it's interesting because some people then completely move into a friend, let's say a friendship circle or a community that is completely immersed in this thing.
Oh, I'm sure some people do. I wouldn't say that.
No, but I mean, sometimes it's not, I don't think it's a good thing if you completely kind of ignore, like, people who would never do that, for example. So, and it seems like a little bit of I mean, at least on social media, it feels like you're either in this thing or you're not in this thing.
Yeah,
so,
I don't feel that at all. In fact, it's, I said squash. I think it's almost more akin to skiing.
Yeah.
I consider myself a dedicated skier, really like skiing. The truth is I ski about 2 weeks a year, on a good year, 3 weeks. So if you don't ski, that's not a problem in our relationship at all. I'm just gone for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. So here, the fact that I'm at Burning Man or maybe 2 other festivals, it doesn't really change much fundamentally. It just means I have a new friend group and new set of people who like to do one activity. But for me, it's less about psychedelics than it is about music. So
so can you talk about the music aspect of things?
No, I think for me, Burning Man, the music is a huge part of it, and other festivals like Glastonbury, which is different, or going to Garbage in Germany, outside of Berlin, or things like that. That I've grown to like electronic dance music much more than I did before. So that's the driver. Yes, sometimes when people are there, they will take smaller doses of psychedelics at the same time, but it's really about the music.
And what does it do to you, the music? Why is it important to you as a person?
Oh, I just think I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I've always liked dancing, and even at, I'm generally the oldest person on the dance floor, but at 62, I'll be there at 3 a.m. and having a great time dancing for hours with other people. So I think it's a fantastic workout, fun, you're listening to music. So yeah, I love that.
But is this something you discovered later, or was it always something you were
I did always like to dance. During the period of time when I had, we had 3 children at home, there was much less of that happening.
Yeah, of course.
Then it coincided with the time when all 3 kids went off to university. They're out of the house, more flexibility to do whatever you want on a weekend. And so then I started finding out about this. My brother had been to Burning Man 10 times, my younger brother, and then my best friend had been 24 times.
Wow, okay.
And so those were 2 people that said, you should really come to Burning Man. This would be great. And then I just really started to like it much more than I thought.
So in what way do you prepare for it? I mean, it's obviously every August.
Oh, for Burning Man, you have to prepare a lot. And if you have a camp, you have a lot of preparation. There's a whole group that has to come the week before to build your camp. Normally when you go to Burning Man, you are just showing up that week. There's an existing camp. You either are driving in an RV or someone has set up a tent for you and you're paying dues. So it covers, those are only 2 choices, a tent or an RV. So you show up, you have, a suitcase with your various outfits, and you're there to have fun. You don't need any money because you can't buy anything. And so it's fun.
So what about the costumes or the outfits? What is interesting for you?
I think another great, there are many, I could spend hours on the things
costumes.
I like about, things I like about Burning Man.
Yeah.
One of them is that there are no brands there. So
no brands.
Yeah, you will
like
never see,
like Coachella or something.
Yeah, you will never see the word, Google or Oracle or Microsoft or anything. And so it even extends for most people to clothing. So you're not going to see someone wearing a Chanel something. So then there's this wide variety of Mad Max style leather, sexy, whatever people feel like. And there's a wide variety, but people make an effort. It's no different than if I have 60 people coming to my house tonight for Halloween. And so I require a Halloween costume.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, if everyone else is going to be wearing a costume and you wear one, it's always fun. Creativity, you can't believe, that's so funny, that's amazing, I didn't recognize you. And so these are not costumes, these are outfits at Burning Man. But it's still, I think when people make an effort, everything's better. You're just going to look your best, or you're going to show off your personality, and your inner whatever, your inner sexiness, your inner, leather, your inner BDSM, whatever you've got going on in your brain, we're going to see.
But it's also something that has not been in our culture a long time. I mean, like in let's say in Europe, you have like carnival-ish things, and people really kind of for days they disappear. Also, in a way, kind of like in Cologne, it's really like in that time, the people from Cologne, they would leave the city.
Oh, yeah.
If they're not involved in this, because it's just like really, it is a little bit like Burning Man. Like for 4 days, nobody expects to take any calls or anything, and people are really get lost somewhere, kind of.
Yeah.
So, and do you think this is something that is kind of missing in our culture also, and that's why it's becoming? It seems to be everybody now is interested in this. Everybody knows about it. So, do we need these kind of loopholes, let's say, to go somewhere?
I mean, look, I think that there are. With an economy that is more digital, people are spending more time online, which is very efficient, very effective. I'm the first person who would rather spend 5 minutes shopping on a site and have it delivered to my house than go spend an hour in a store. So, but all of that means you're not seeing people.
Yeah.
And so there's this thirst to get out there and be with other people. And so I think what has been interesting is that from a sports point of view, even though we can all watch the football game on a huge screen TV, everyone is going to the matches. The matches are full. Attendance is not down because they want to be with other people. That's why they're there. Mm-hmm. They want to be with other people. And when you're on you can dance at home and put on the music, but guess what? It's not the same.
Yeah.
Somehow it's not the same. There's a reason for literally tens of thousands of years. People have been dancing together by the fire, or in a nightclub or somewhere else or at a wedding. That's not going away.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think most people, when they look back over, if I said, name the 10 most fun nights you had in the last year or two, for most people, a lot of them involve dancing.
So do you think psychedelics should have a different name than psychedelics in the long term, or doesn't it matter in the end, kind of?
I'm not focused on that. I mean, I think we know what we're talking about. It is somehow over time, all societies got comfortable with alcohol. Even though, 25,000 people a year die in car crashes, a lot of them are drunk. The number of people, assaults, we saw at universities that almost every single case of sexual assault involved people drinking.
I can imagine.
We analyzed all the cases.
Really? Oh, wow.
All the cases at Yale. And none of them involved psychedelics. None of them involved smoking weed. All of them involved alcohol.
And why do you think that is? Like, why is the alcohol...
Alcohol, can make people, and especially men, for whatever reason, slightly more violent, slightly more aggressive. It just brings that out, and that doesn't happen on MDMA. It just doesn't. So it's a very different environment. Some people ask me when they see pictures of Burning Man, and sometimes you'll see pictures of women wearing incredibly sexy, revealing outfits.
Yeah,
outfits you would never wear if you were going to a bar in New York City, because it's just you're thinking this is not going to go well.
Yeah,
not going to go well. I'm not going to be safe.
No,
right?
Yeah,
but at Burning Man, you are, and people feel that way. Why? Because people are, if they're there, they're mostly on psychedelics, and it's just a less aggressive environment. So, but imagine I came to you and said, I think we should legalize this new substance, and so any university student who wants to do it, would be allowed to do it. And you're like, okay, are there any downsides? And if I said to you, yeah, hundreds of people will get raped on it, you would say to me, no, Kevin, there's no chance we're going to allow that. Are you insane? And I'm saying, no, I'm talking about alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's alcohol. People just shouldn't drink too much.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But people, put up with that and live with that and have normalized that in a way that they're like, okay. I mean, I see people all the time are like, oh, I could never try a little bit of mushrooms. I'll go crazy and jump off the roof. Yet, 90% of the people who fall off roofs or jump off roofs are drunk.
90 is up to 90%.
I made that up. I'm just saying that there's so many more people who drink and have problems and fall down the stairs and hurt themselves.
Yeah.
If you go into a hospital at 1 a.m. on Friday night and ask the doctors what are they seeing, there's a number of cases of people who got hurt because they were drunk.
And why is it that, there's also a lot of depression around alcohol abuse, kind of that either people drink because they feel depressed or they develop a rather depressive mode.
The interesting thing is that no one has ever suggested, because it doesn't work, that if you told me, oh, I really have depression, No one says to you, you know what you should do is lie on your couch and drink a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Because I really think that'll cure you.
Yeah.
You know,
That's so good.
No doctor has ever said that because it won't help you. In fact, it'll make it worse. And yet, you know, we have these studies from Yale and things that are saying, yeah, you should take psilocybin or MDMA, you know, with a guide, and it may help your depression. So it's completely different than alcohol. And so that's why I think we're just not to the place where we have normalized this behavior.
Yeah.
By the way, a good example will be in indigenous cultures, many of them did normalize, you know, ayahuasca or peyote, and they did it in a way that was safe. They have done it for thousands of years. They figured out what you should do, what you should not do. You know, many people would fast before. They would do whatever they did, they needed to prepare, and then they would do it in a good way. So we're just not there yet. We're getting there. We're not there yet.
And there's also no alcohol culture in their culture.
No.
I mean, so you're mentioning Yale a couple of times. So, I mean, like in a lot of universities, there's now the re-emergence of psychedelic research. So, and I think if people hear, wait a minute, like in Yale, there's a psychedelic research, they kind of like they don't believe it in the first place. So maybe you can talk to how this, we've been at the opening actually of the reopening of the ribbon cutting thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems to be a really big department. So maybe you can talk about how this will look like and what's the impact also that will have.
Yeah, I think that just in many universities, Yale being one of them, you know, they're researchers who've become interested in it, you know, not because they are hippies. Like John Crystal, I mentioned earlier, who's the chair of the psychology department and one of the greatest academics at Yale, did all the original work on ketamine, has never tried ketamine. Never tried it. He's like, I don't, you know, if I were testing a breast cancer drug, I wouldn't necessarily take that either. I don't need to. I'm a scientist. And I just measure and look and see what it is. And that's what I do. I'm a researcher. So so many people are intrigued. You know, researchers are trying to solve problems. It's one, because it makes you feel good about what you're doing, and you know you're a better person and you've made the world a better place. Two, if it gets published and you did great research and solve something, you move up the academic ladder. That's what they do for a living. That's why they have studied for 7 years to get a PhD. And so they're just finding this a really interesting problem that needs to be solved. So I'm very happy, and many universities are doing great work.
So, and this is kind of, it's not actually such a super specific thing. It's just like any other problem that you will research,
really just biotech,
right?
Yeah. This is, you know, and, you know, many of the things that are under psychedelics, getting back to the word, are not hallucinogenics.
Yeah.
And so MDMA and methadone are not hallucinogenics. They sometimes get put into psychedelics, but I could argue that they are not. They do make you feel a little bit different. But by the way, I could name many drugs. You know, if you have, you know, chemotherapy or radiation, your body will feel different.
Yeah.
You know, people don't do it for fun.
Yeah.
But you will feel it. And so it's more like that. And so that's one of the advantages of the non-hallucinogenic substances, compounds here, that and I think will be very effective. And then you don't have this expectation that you're going to, or you don't have this fear that you're going to see blue elephants or some crazy thing. It's a drug like any other drug, and each drug has different characteristics.
But I mean, like, last question for you today. So some people say, well, we can do psychedelics medicine without having a trip or without having a psychedelic or maybe spiritual experience. Do you think it's a good idea?
So people, you know, everyone is working on the idea. Yeah, I think it's fine if it works. We just haven't shown that can work yet.
Yeah.
So if you told me you can take, you know, LSD, but there'll be absolutely no tripping, but it will help your mental health issues, great.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're really just talking about now is, you know, drug discovery. We're trying to find, if we can, a pill that will help you. We know you have something in your brain that is causing a problem, and so you're not happy with how your life is going, and we're trying to put you in a better place. If you could do that through exercise and diet, great. You know, if you can't, then, you know, sometimes pills can be helpful. You know, if you could lose all the weight on your own, great. Ozempic is making people healthier. the people who are obese and lose 35 pounds are in a better place, I think, because they're taking that. So science helped. And obviously that we could name 50 other things that, for breast cancer or other things that where various forms of pills are helpful.
So it seems like a good idea to help destigmatize it, to put it actually not in such a spectacular context that it could be like you say, it's been amongst other medications, if you want.
Yeah, so. I think for the ease of use for people, I think that's true, and so it might be beneficial. And it is possible that we can't. That's inherent in the product in a way. That
it could be.
It is an extraordinary thing. We just again, it's getting back to we don't know how the brain works well enough to answer that question. But I know that's a field of research that some people are going after, and if they find it, I think that's amazing. Anything we can do to help people with mental health issues is a big win. The level of pain and suffering in this country through mental health issues is quite extraordinary.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Happy to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to the show. If you want to know more about how we fast-track psychedelic destigmatization, please head over to the New Health Club podcast on Apple or Spotify. There are many episodes talking about several substances, several treatments, several ways how psychedelics can be used these days. You also find us on Instagram under the New Health Club. But if you want to know more about our nonprofit foundation, the New Health Institute, please head over to www.thenewhealthinstitute.org. Of course, we are here on Instagram too, under the New Health Institute. Very important to me is also that you subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. Please look for the newhealthclub.substack.com. This is very important to me because we really start to build right now a media platform on Substack around psychedelics and new health topics. And of course, we would love your support on this and love if you subscribe. Love if you tell other people, your friends, your family, your community, so we can really kick off this endeavor and actually have another place, another platform next to the podcast where we can get you information and education around psychedelics.